It might be difficult to work out how right now, at this exact moment, what the words of Jeremiah mean for your life. Imagine you're out the door first thing. It's pretty much still dark, it's cold, and the day is ahead of you. You're thinking about the email you need to reply to, the potentially awkward conversation you need to have with your boss, but mainly you're thinking about that strong cup of coffee. Your mind then moves on to other matters. The friend that you're meeting for lunch, what your kids or your parents or your siblings are up to today, that football match later. In this exact moment, with the day ahead, Jeremiah has the words we need to hear. He is writing to Israel, a people who are in the process of being exiled out of their homeland by a foreign occupier. As things go for God's chosen people, this is pretty much the worst case scenario. It will have felt like game over for the people being exiled. What's the battle plan for fighting their way out of their new land? Has God abandoned them even? But Jeremiah writes them this letter, and in it he says 3 key things that helped God's exiles understand what their purpose was, but also for us on our way out the door on a cold morning, what our purpose is. No matter what our stage of life is, no matter what we do. Number 1, Jeremiah tells them to work for the shalom of the place they find themselves. In our Bibles, this is often written as peace and prosperity. It would have been all too easy for the exiles to be unenthused at the thought of contributing to their new town or city. But Jeremiah is really clear. He says, make an effort to work for the peace and prosperity of wherever it is that you end up. Because if it prospers, then you too will prosper. And this phrase, peace and prosperity, is translated from the Hebrew shalom. Another way to translate shalom is completeness or wholeness. It's peace in a sense that's about more than just a mere absence of violence. It's about welfare, safety, soundness, everything being as it should. When we read peace and prosperity, this is what we have to think of. This prosperity might look a little bit different to the world's understanding of material prosperity, and that's okay. We are to work for the blessing and flourishing of others. Don't sit on your hands. So whether you're going to work or looking after someone or hanging out with your friends, know that you can find purpose in working for shalom, for welfare, completeness, wholeness there. This is a precursor to Jesus instructing his followers to be lights in the world. For both us today and the exiles back then, it was highly unlikely the places we find ourselves will fully reflect the glory of God. But the command is the same now as it was then. Don't hide away. Don't violently resist. Be an agent of shalom. Number 2, Jeremiah instructs them to remain faithful and undistracted in this new place. It's made clear that there will be people in this new place who will seek to lead them astray, to distract them from what's really going on, from what's really the most important thing. Are we guilty of making our jobs an idol? Are we subconsciously driven by a desire to raise our social status at any cost? You may already be thinking about something in one of the places you are that could be distracting you from your true purpose. But Jeremiah says that we are to remain faithful to God. And as we do that, we will find ourselves engaged in that work of shalom, providing blessing and flourishing for those around us. Jesus lives a fully human life. And one way we see this is in the wide range of things he does during his ministry. There's time with his disciples, time addressing crowds, performing miracles, healing the sick, catching loads of fish. But he stays faithful to his Father in heaven and his true calling on his way to the cross. So much of Jesus' life is an example to us, and this faithful undistractedness is no exception. And finally, number 3, we are to be creators and restorers. If we read ahead into chapter 30, we read Jeremiah relaying God's promise that this is not the end of the story. Reading these words today on this side of the cross, we can find a grand invitation. As Jesus commissions us to go into the world at the end of Matthew's Gospel, we go as God's hands and feet. And if God's into restoring, then we're in the restoration business as well. Wherever we are, whatever we're doing, we are invited to join in God's restoration work. When we add in a dash of Genesis 2 and the invitation we receive there as humanity to create, we find we have purpose in the creation and restoration of all that God's made. Creating new ways to complete a task more professionally, or restoring a broken friendship between two bickering mates. This is purposeful living. So join us this Lent as we journey through the example of Jeremiah and Jesus and examine the different parts of our lives, work, paid or unpaid, family, friendships, interests, neighbourhoods, and then Jesus' journey to the cross, and think about what purpose, in the way that Jeremiah sees it, means there.